I didn't even see her coming. One second, I was standing by the dessert table at our family reunion, awkwardly picking at a brownie I didn't want. And the next, these tiny arms wrapped tightly around my waist. I looked down. A little girl, maybe 5 years old, was holding me like her life depended on it. Her face was pressed against my stomach, curly chestnut hair tangled around her cheeks. She smelled like cotton candy and sunscreen. My body went rigid. Then she said it. "Mommy, I missed you so much." I froze. My mind blanked. The brownie slipped from my hand. "I'm not a mother." I stared at the girl. Her voice was small but certain. She looked up at me with hazel eyes full of hope and something else. Recognition. Her face had that soft roundness of a child, but her expression was old, like she had been waiting for this moment for a long time. She tugged at my shirt and said it again, more sure this time. "Mommy, I knew you'd come." Laughter and music from the reunion buzzed in the background, but around us it felt like everything stopped. The trees weren't swaying, the kids weren't shouting, just me and her, locked in a moment that didn't make sense. Then someone screamed, "Kessie, sweetheart, no, that's not your mommy." I turned. A woman was running toward us, panic in her voice, her heels digging into the grass. Her name tag read Nina. She looked terrified. Kessie. So that was her name. The girl clung tighter to me, gripping the back of my shirt like she thought someone might pull her away. "She's confused," Nina said breathlessly, trying to pry Kessie off me. "She's had a hard time lately, please. I'm so sorry. She doesn't know what she's saying." But Kessie wouldn't move. She tightened her hold and buried her face in my shirt. "I'm not confused," she said softly. "This is my mommy." My heart was pounding so hard I could barely hear. Nina looked at me, her eyes darting with confusion and embarrassment. Do you know her? I don't understand what's happening." I shook my head. I've never met her." That wasn't a lie. And yet, something deep inside me was shifting, a slow, spreading ache in my chest. My body didn't know her, but something else did. I started to bend down, thinking maybe I could look her in the eyes, ask her who she really thought I was. But before I could move, I felt a hand on my shoulder. It was my Uncle Torin. "Come with me," he said, voice low and tight. "Right now." "What? Why?" He looked down at Kessie, then at me, and for the first time in my life, I saw fear in his eyes. "There's something you were never told. We don't have much time." My stomach turned. "I don't understand," I said. He leaned closer and spoke barely above a whisper. "You were kidnapped as a child." My breath caught. He went on. "You had a baby. We didn't know. That little girl, she's your daughter." My knees buckled and the world spun. The reunion, the voices, the sunlight through the trees, all of it faded. I couldn't speak. I couldn't think. All I could do was stare at the little girl holding onto me like she'd been searching for me her whole life. And suddenly, I wasn't so sure she hadn't. Before everything unraveled, I thought I knew who I was. I was 24, living in Denver, working as a veterinary tech, keeping my head down and my circle small. I had friends, but not many close ones. No boyfriend, no kids. I'd built a life that was safe and simple. I thought that was enough. But the truth was, I never felt rooted anywhere. No matter how long I stayed in a place or how many times I told myself I was fine, I carried a quiet, constant emptiness that never went away. Like something essential had gone missing a long time ago, and I'd just learned how to live without it. So when my mother called out of the blue and said the family was throwing a reunion at my cousin's place in Wisconsin, I didn't jump at the invitation. In fact, I almost deleted the voicemail. We hadn't spoken in nearly a year. Still, something made me call her back. Maybe it was guilt, maybe curiosity, maybe just the dull ache of wondering what it would feel like to belong somewhere. I hadn't seen most of my extended family since I left for college. I told myself it was just one weekend. I'd go, smile, stay quiet, and leave before anyone remembered why I kept my distance in the first place. The reunion was held at a rented lake house outside a small town called Crescent Bay. Dozens of relatives I barely remembered were already there by the time I arrived. Kids were running barefoot across the grass, burgers were sizzling on the grill, and the picnic tables were covered in red and white checkered cloths and plastic trays of food. It should have felt warm. It should have felt like coming home. Instead, it felt like stepping into someone else's life. The first person to greet me was my younger brother, Callan. He hugged me tight, lifting me off the ground like he used to when we were teenagers. He was taller now, broader in the shoulders, but his smile hadn't changed. "You look like you actually sleep now," he said, teasing. "City life treating you that good?" I laughed, even though it wasn't entirely true. Next came my father, Jaron. He gave me a quick, awkward hug and handed me a bottle of water like he didn't know what else to say. He was always like that, kind but distant, like someone who had something to say but didn't have the words to say it. Then my mother, Maribel. Her hug was brief, controlled. She wore pearls and a stiff lavender blouse, like she couldn't fully relax even around her own family. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I'm glad you came," she said. "Everyone's missed you." I nodded, unsure how to respond. She didn't ask how I'd been. She never did. Maribel loved presentation. She liked order. But emotions, vulnerability, those were things she kept buried under polite phrases and forced smiles. I drifted between conversations, catching snippets from relatives I barely recognized. My cousin Lena had 3 kids now. Aunt Rosa had opened a bakery in Michigan. Everyone kept asking if I was seeing anyone, and I gave the same tight-lipped smile and shook my head. I wandered toward the photo table set up near the deck. It was covered with old family pictures taped to cardboard backing, birthdays, cookouts, Christmas mornings. I scanned the images, looking for my younger self, trying to find proof that I had always been here, that I belonged to this story. In one photo, I was 6 years old, sitting on my dad's lap, grinning with a missing tooth. In another, I was 9, blowing out candles on a cake I didn't remember. The pictures felt familiar but hollow, like looking at scenes from a dream someone else had. As I stood there, my Uncle Torin joined me. He'd always been quiet, more of a watcher than a talker. He'd served in Vietnam and returned with a permanent limp and eyes that missed nothing. As a kid, I was a little afraid of him. As an adult, I respected him more than anyone else in the family. He said nothing at first, just stared at the photo board. Then he nodded toward one of the pictures, a black and white shot of a teenage girl holding a baby. "That used to be on your grandmother's dresser," he said. "She always kept it there, said it was a reminder." "Of what?" I asked. He didn't answer, just walked away. I stared at the photo. The girl had dark hair and wide eyes. The baby was bundled tight in a crocheted blanket. The girl's smile was small, like she wasn't sure she was allowed to be happy. I didn't recognize either of them. I turned away, trying to shake the strange pull in my chest. That was when I felt the tug on my shirt. I looked down, and everything I thought I knew about my life began to slip away. She didn't let go. Even as Nina reached out and gently tried to pull her away, the little girl wrapped her arms tighter around my waist. I could feel her trembling. "Kessie," Nina said softly, "this lady isn't your mom, sweetie. Come back to me, okay? You're just confused." The girl shook her head hard. "She's not a lady. She's my mommy." I was frozen in place. My heart was thudding so loudly I could barely hear Nina's voice anymore. My hands hung at my sides like they didn't belong to me. Every part of my body was telling me something was wrong, but I couldn't move. "She's had a few meltdowns lately," Nina said, her voice a strained whisper. "We've been dealing with some things. I'm sorry if she scared you. I don't know where she even picked that up." I looked down again. Kessie's eyes were fixed on me, wide, trusting, pleading. There was something in her face that struck me in a place I didn't know existed. A shadow of something familiar, a softness I saw in the mirror when I was little. My chest tightened. I crouched down to meet her eyes. "Sweetheart, what makes you think I'm your mommy?" I asked, trying to keep my voice from shaking. Kessie didn't blink. "Because I remember you. I had dreams. And when I saw you over there by the cupcakes, I knew it. You smell the same." I opened my mouth but couldn't form a response. My throat felt raw. Nina stepped in again, more urgent this time. "I don't know what's going on here, but she's been doing this lately. Imagining things, attaching herself to strangers. I'm her adoptive mother. She's mine." Kessie pulled away just far enough to look at her, but didn't move from my side. "You're my mommy too, but she's the first one. I remember being warm with her. I remember her singing." I couldn't breathe. I hadn't sung to anyone since I was a teenager. Then I felt a presence beside me. A firm hand gripped my elbow. "Leora," Uncle Torrin said. "Come with me, now." I stood up slowly. What is going on? He glanced at Kessie, then at Nina, then locked eyes with me. His look wasn't one of confusion. It was something else. Guilt, fear, urgency. Nina spoke up again. "I think she's just confused. This isn't—" Torrin cut her off. "Ma'am, this is a family matter now. We'll take care of it." Without waiting for her reply, he gently but firmly steered me away from the crowd. Kessie's voice echoed behind us. "Don't go far, Mommy. I'll be waiting." My knees nearly gave out. Torrin led me around the side of the lake house where no one could see us. He pulled a crumpled cigarette from his pocket but didn't light it. His fingers were shaking. "Talk," I said. "What was that? Who is she? Why did she say that?" He exhaled sharply. "I need you to listen, and I need you to not walk away when you hear this." "Torrin, say it." He rubbed his face, then looked at me with a kind of broken honesty I had never seen from him before. "You were kidnapped when you were 13. My stomach dropped. "No," I said. "That's not possible. I've always been here. I grew up here." He nodded slowly. "That's what they wanted you to believe. Your parents, Jaren and Maribel, they didn't adopt you legally. They found you. After you'd been missing almost a year, you didn't remember everything. They decided not to tell you." My breath caught. "What are you saying?" "I started digging when I noticed how jumpy Maribel got every time you asked about your childhood. A few years back, I found an old police report. Your photo was in it. The name listed wasn't Leora." I took a step back. "This isn't real. I would remember something that big." He nodded again. "You think that, but trauma works differently, especially with kids. Whoever took you, they kept you hidden, off the grid, and you weren't alone." I stared at him, unable to move. "You were pregnant when you came back," he said quietly. "You were 14. You gave birth. And somehow your parents covered it up. Hid the entire thing. No one was told, not even me. That little girl, Kessie, is yours." Everything inside me collapsed. I sank down onto the gravel path behind the house and stared at the trees. I didn't cry. I couldn't. My brain was scrambling for anything to make this make sense. I remembered my teenage years, blank spaces, long nights, strange gaps in my memory that I had always explained away. "This doesn't make any sense," I whispered. Torrin crouched beside me. "I wish it didn't. I wish I wasn't the one telling you this, but that girl knew you, she felt you, and you felt her, didn't you?" I nodded slowly. "Then your heart knows what your mind forgot." I didn't go back to the party right away. I sat on a flat rock behind the lake house, knees pulled to my chest, arms wrapped around myself like I needed to hold my body together. The sounds of laughter, clinking cups, and music floated from the backyard like they belonged to someone else's life. Torrin stayed nearby but gave me space. He didn't ask me questions. He didn't try to explain anything further. I think he knew that silence was the only thing I could handle in that moment. I couldn't stop seeing her face, Kessie. The way she held me, the way she spoke with certainty, not fear, not confusion, love. She didn't hesitate. She called me Mommy like she'd been waiting years to find me, but I didn't remember her. That truth cut deepest. If what Torrin said was real, if I had carried a baby, given birth, lost her, I had no memory of it. Not a sound, not a smell, not a face, nothing. How could I forget something like that? I closed my eyes and searched for answers. There were moments in my past that didn't fit. Months when I was 13 and 14 that felt like a blur. I had always blamed it on puberty or stress or just bad memory. But now, I began to question everything. The night terrors, the missing school days, the feeling that something about my life had started in the middle of a sentence. Maybe those weren't just childhood growing pains, maybe they were scars I didn't know I had. I looked up at Torrin. "Why did you wait so long to tell me?" He lit the cigarette he'd been holding for an hour. "Because I couldn't prove anything until now. Because I hoped I was wrong. And because I knew, once I told you, everything you thought you knew would be gone." He took a long drag and looked out at the trees. "But that little girl didn't lie. And you didn't pull away from her." He was right. My body hadn't flinched. It had responded like something buried deep had been touched for the first time in years. I stood up. I need to know the truth. I don't care what it costs. I'm not going to live in the dark. Torin nodded. Then we start with Maribel. My feet felt like they weighed 100 pounds each, but I followed him back around the house. The reunion was still going strong. Someone had brought out a karaoke speaker, and a group of kids were dancing to a pop song near the dock. Nina and Kessie were sitting on a bench near the fire pit, away from the others. Kessie spotted me and gave a tiny wave. I managed a small nod, then kept walking. Maribel was seated at a table near the porch, sipping lemonade and talking to my Aunt Rosa like nothing had happened. Her smile faded as soon as she saw me. "I need to speak with you, alone," I said. She looked at me for a long second, then excused herself from the table. We walked to the far side of the house where the hydrangeas grew thick along the fence line. My voice shook, but I didn't back down. "Do you remember a girl named Talia Rayburn?" She froze. "I saw a police report. That was my name before you brought me here." Her mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. "Torin told me everything. You took me in when I was missing. And I didn't just disappear. I was pregnant." Her face paled. "You lied to me my entire life," I said. "And now I have a daughter who's been calling someone else her mother. Do you have any idea what that feels like?" Maribel reached for my hand, but I stepped back. "You don't understand," she said finally. "You were broken when we found you. You had no memory. You were sick, terrified. They told us you would never recover if we brought up what happened. You knew I had a baby." She didn't deny it. I felt anger rise in my throat like a flood I couldn't stop. "You gave her away without telling me. You let me grow up thinking I had no past, no child. You stole everything." Tears welled in her eyes. "We didn't know what else to do. We didn't want to lose you. You didn't save me. You silenced me." I turned and walked away before she could respond. The world around me felt like it was spinning, but inside I was clearer than I'd ever been. I headed toward the bench where Nina sat, her arm around Kessie. Nina stood up when she saw me. "I think we need to talk." "Yes," I said. "We really do." Nina and I sat across from each other in the screened porch behind the lake house. The air smelled like pine needles and charcoal. Kessie was inside playing with some cousins, her voice floating in and out with every creak of the screen door. Nina folded her hands tightly in her lap. She looked exhausted. She hadn't touched the iced tea in front of her. "I need to ask you something," I said. "And I need you to be honest, even if it's hard." She nodded. "I will." "Did anyone tell you where Kessie came from? Really came from? Not the paperwork, not the foster agency story." "The truth." Nina's face tightened. She hesitated. "I've suspected things for a while," she said. "When she first came to me, she was only a few weeks old, no name, no birth certificate. They called it an emergency placement, no background. Just a baby handed over at night with 2 blankets and a bottle. I was told her mother was a teenager who disappeared again after the birth. That's all they would say." I clenched my jaw. "Did you ever ask to meet the mother?" "They told me she was mentally unstable, that she didn't want contact. But Kessie would point to faces in magazines when she was 3 and call them mommy. I thought it was her imagination. Then she found an old photo on my bookshelf. It was stuck inside one of my yearbooks, not even mine, but from a secondhand shop. She stared at it for 10 minutes. She kissed it. Then she asked me when her real mommy was coming back." I swallowed hard. "What did the photo look like?" "It was a teenage girl with dark eyes and tangled hair. You were standing by a brick wall. I didn't know it was you until today. But when she saw you across the yard, she lit up, like something clicked. I felt a sting in my chest. All this time, my daughter had been living just a few towns away, growing up with a stranger who hadn't even known her full story. I had missed everything. Her first steps, her first word, her laugh, her tears, every birthday, every milestone. And it wasn't just because I'd lost her. It was because someone made the decision to keep her from me. "I want a DNA test," I said. "I need to know for sure." "I already did one," Nina said quietly. "After the last time she had a dream about a woman named Leora. She kept repeating it, over and over. I found a brush you left behind when you visited here years ago. I had it tested through a friend who works in a lab." My body froze. "And You're her biological mother, Nina said, her voice cracking. I got the results 2 weeks ago. I didn't know how to find you or what to do with it. But when she saw you today, I realized the decision wasn't mine anymore. Everything inside me collapsed and rebuilt at once. There was no room for denial. The pieces fit now, the way she hugged me, the dreams, the photo, my memories coming apart at the seams. She was mine, not by accident, not by misunderstanding. She was my daughter. I pressed my palms into my eyes and tried not to sob. Nina reached into her purse and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was the test result. I unfolded it with shaking fingers. My name. Kessie's name. The match percentage. There it was. Akilint venkilink eges kilins tizet shasalekos bizonyosak. She was mine. I stood up and paced the porch, heart racing. What happens now? Nina asked. I looked at her. She wasn't angry, just unsure. I don't want to take her away from you, I said. You've raised her. You've protected her. But I need to be part of her life. I missed everything already. I can't miss what comes next. She already loves you, Nina said. You don't have to win her over. You just have to show up. The screen door creaked open. Kessie poked her head outside, curls bouncing around her cheeks. Mommy Leora, are you coming back in? She said it like she had known me forever. I nodded and smiled, tears finally falling. Yes, baby, I'm coming. She held the door open, waiting. I stepped back inside with her, holding her small hand in mine. My entire world had changed, not with a loud bang or a dramatic confrontation, but with a child's arms around me and a whispered name I hadn't known belonged to me. Leora, Mommy. Both finally made sense. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake in the guest room of the lake house, listening to the sounds of quiet footsteps, doors creaking and the muffled voices of people heading to bed after the reunion. The air smelled like rain. Kessie's voice echoed in my mind, clear and soft. Mommy Leora, are you coming back in? It played on repeat, not haunting me, but healing me. For the first time in my life, I wasn't wondering where I belonged. I wasn't pretending to feel connected. I wasn't drifting. I was someone's mother, and she had known me before I ever knew myself. The next morning, I watched her from the porch swing while she chased Bubbles with Kaylin and one of our cousin's kids. She was light on her feet, full of joy, totally unaware that her entire life had just shifted. Or maybe not. Maybe she had always known something was missing and now felt it settle into place. Nina joined me on the porch. She handed me a cup of coffee and sat beside me. There was no awkwardness, just quiet understanding between us. We'll figure this out, she said. We'll go slow, keep things steady for her. I'm not trying to take her away from you, I said, but I need her in my life. She nodded. She needs you, too. Over the next few weeks, everything changed. I returned to Denver, but I didn't stay long. I gave my notice at work, packed up my apartment, and found a rental house 40 minutes from Nina's. It wasn't easy. My savings took a hit. I had to pick up part-time work while I looked for something full-time in the area, but I didn't care. Every sacrifice felt like a step closer to the life I should have had from the beginning. I started seeing a trauma therapist. The memories came in fragments, sometimes in dreams, sometimes in flashes while I was washing dishes or driving. I remembered a small room with pink curtains, the smell of baby powder, pain, loneliness, the feeling of someone placing a tiny newborn into my arms while I cried without sound. I remembered singing, a name I had whispered that no one else had ever heard. Kessie. It was the name I had given her. She had never been told that, not by Nina, not by anyone. She remembered it on her own. Maribel and Jaron didn't speak to me after I left the reunion. They sent a letter through a family lawyer. No apology, no acknowledgement. Just a formal statement claiming they did what they thought was best. I didn't pursue charges, though I could have. What they did wasn't just immoral, it was criminal. But I didn't need revenge. I needed peace. Torrin stayed close. We talked often. He checked in every Sunday, asked about Kessie, told me stories about my real mother, the one I never met. Her name had been Alara. She died before I was found again. She had spent her final years searching for me. The last photo she had taken of me, the one Kessie found in the yearbook, had been Alara's favorite. Somehow, it had made its way into the world, and found its way back to the person who needed it most. I told Kessie about Alara when the time felt right. I showed her the photo. She traced it with her finger and said, "She looks like us." I smiled. That's because she was part of us. Kessie and I started small. Weekend visits at the park, ice cream dates, coloring books and bedtime stories. The first time she fell asleep in my arms, I didn't move for over an hour. I just watched her breathe and let myself feel everything I had missed. Over time, the bond grew, naturally, gently, without pressure. Nina supported us every step of the way. She never once treated me like an intruder. She treated me like a teammate. We found a rhythm that worked for all three of us. Kessie's world didn't split in two. It expanded. One afternoon, after we had built a puzzle together on the living room rug, she looked up at me and asked, "Were you scared when I wasn't with you?" I nodded. I didn't know what was missing, but I felt it every day. She reached over, placed her hand on my cheek, and said, "I wasn't scared. I knew I'd find you." That was the moment everything inside me finally settled. I had been stolen, lied to, broken, but I wasn't lost anymore. My past had been buried, but not erased. My daughter had been hidden, but not taken forever. Somehow, love had bridged the years we missed. There's no perfect ending to a story like this. There are gaps that can't be filled, questions that won't be answered, but there is healing. There is truth. There is the chance to rebuild with what remains. And for me, that's enough. Because now, when I hear the word mommy, I don't flinch or doubt or wonder. I answer. Sometimes the truth doesn't come to us in words. It finds us in the arms of a child, in a name we forgot we once spoke, in a hug that pulls the past back into the light. This isn't just a story about being lost. It's about being found in the most unexpected, beautiful way. If this story moved you, please like the video to support the channel, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and leave a comment below. I read every single one. Have you ever felt like something was missing, only to discover a truth you never expected? I'd love to hear your story. And if you want more true emotional stories that stay with you long after the video ends, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. There's so much more to tell, and I don't want you to miss a thing. Thank you for being here.